Hello, so today we're going to be going over the set 14 new traits. We're going to go over all the new traits, and then either in this video or in a part 2 video, I'm going to go over each of the units and their abilities. So make sure to like and subscribe if you want more set 14 updates. PBE might be out tomorrow, I'm not sure, or it's out on Wednesday as per usual patch day. So as soon as PBE is out, then we're going to start posting gameplay videos of the set, so look forward to that. Anyways, let's read through these traits. So Anima Squad. At each tier, pick a weapon that randomly Anima Squad champions fire periodically during combat. So this is based on like that little, I think it was called Swarm. It was like the Vampire Survivors, Fight the Endless Hordes type of thing, where you upgrade your weapons over time. So it's kind of similar to that. And then Anima Squad champions gain armor, magic resist, and damage amp. So this is one of the major vertical traits. So it has a 3, a 5, a 10, and I think 10 requires you to have 2 emblems, and that's like your Giga Prismatic trait. So they have a little bit of inherent tankiness and damage amp, which is nice because I like it when the main vertical traits give you a variety of stats. Think something like Rebel. I found that, like, although Rebel maybe didn't fall into the most amazing spot in set 13, is something that I kind of enjoyed, just getting a lot of stats on a lot of units that makes it really easy to play around in your early to mid game. But here you also have this, basically at each tier, so 3, 5, 7, and 10, you basically get an extra weapon. I think you pick between AD or AP weapons, so depending on who your primary carry is going to be, I'm sure there's an AP carry and maybe an AD carry, so it looks like Zaya's AD, and then Leona's AP, no, Leona's probably a tank. Aurora's the 5 cost that's AP, and she's the one that jumps on the bench and stuff. But you have a good variety of units. It seems like there's some shared synergies, like frontline synergies within the actual trait, which is really nice, right? You have inter-team Vanguard synergy. So this looks like a nice vertical trait. We'll see how it actually plays out. Boombots. Boombots fire a missile every 400 damage dealt at a nearby enemy that inflicts magic damage. So you might want to play this with more of an AP style comp. But I don't think that really matters. It's like bonus damage. And then 10% of the damage taken contributes to damage dealt. So this feels a little bit like Honeymancy in set 12. It might turn itself into a reroll style trait for that reason, but I'm unsure. I know Kog'Maw is similar to how he is now, except AD. So he's a little bit more like of a auto attacker AD unit. So I'm not sure exactly where it falls. Skarner, I think, is more frontline focused, and Fiddlesticks, I'm not sure if he's like a frontline damage dealer or like an AP style, but there might be some sort of Kog'Maw reroll line with this, because a lot of times like you just like inherent tankiness. If you're trying to like scale the damage taken is a lot easier than, like, you know, damage dealt, for example. So if you have like a Giga tank like a Cho'Gath and you set him up here, you might have a good opportunity to do a bunch of damage. However, a lot of these are like higher cost units. It doesn't really look like it has a good reroll angle, so it might just be something that you tech in to get a little bit of extra damage if you're playing around like Cho'Gath main tank. Like Cho'Gath is a bruiser, which I'm sure is like the HP trait, so maybe that's how that works. Cyber Boss. This was the one that I think is the most fun just because of the aesthetic of it. I always like 8-bitty style stuff, so this one might be really cool. But your strongest Cyber Boss upgrades to its final form and gains health, ability power, and its ability hits more enemies. So I'm not sure exactly how it works. Poppy seems like more of like a frontline unit, but she seems like she does a little bit of damage as well, but she's more of like a stun slash disruptor style. Vigar, I know people are going to say it's Vagar. You can Google it. Both of them work. I say Vigar, it's fine. But Vigar, if Vigar is the same star level or a higher star level, he does more true damage. So this is more like a reroll line, it looks like. So you might reroll something around like Cyber Boss, Poppy, and Vigar and make them work out. And then there's also Techie, which we'll see a little bit later. Ziggs is an AP backline unit, so that seems a little bit interesting. And then we have Kabuko, which is like the final splash that really tops off the board, I'm guessing. Cypher. So this is the dedicated loss streak. So gain intel by losing combat, increased for loss streaks, gain a small amount for killing enemies. You may trade your intel for loot one time on either 3-3, 3-7, 4-3, or 4-7. So this is an interesting pick of rounds, because they're always after the 2 spike and the 5 spike, it seems like. So this selection of rounds feels like you have to commit to a very awkward cash out. It depends. We'll see how it actually scales up. But this one seems like it's going to be a little bit more flexible than Chem Baron in that the cash outs aren't specific to the units that you play. So you can do something like cash out on 3-3 and just be up some gold and some components and then pivot into a different comp. Or something like cash out on 3-7. The reason I'm saying the numbers are a little bit weird is because a lot of times you're doing your main roll down on something like 4-2. So if you're doing your roll down on 4-2 and you're trying to pivot out of Cypher, then it makes it a little bit awkward on 4-3. And I think this is a very deliberate choice, trying to make it so you have to make more of a complex decision, right? If you're going for a later cash out like 4-3, you're probably going to have to sack until like a 4-5 roll down or something like that. Or if you're going for a 4-7, you're really committed to the Cypher trait that you probably can't pivot out of it because you would have had to already do like your roll down for your level 8 roll down, for example. And the same with like the rerolls. The same thing applies if you scale it up to a lower cost comp. I'm not sure how strong these units are. Whenever there's lost trait units, a lot of times the unit inherently is a little bit weaker off rip. But we'll see how it goes. If the units themselves are strong, then this trait's going to be extremely broken because like you can just like play around like a reroll and then like win into a later cash out to cap out your board really high. You only get one cash out though, so it's a little bit different than Heartsteel. Heartsteel, the whole point was that you can take repetitive small cash outs and just be up resources. Here you have to kind of commit to being up a resource. However, I think that if you have a Cypher start, you almost always play it because you just cash out at 3-3. You get a little bit of gold and maybe a component anvil or something. We'll see what the cash outs actually look like. And then you can kind of get, trying to play up a resource, which is something that's like, you know, it's kind of like being up a pawn in chess. It doesn't guarantee that you win, but like the more fine-tuned and refined your skill is, the more of an advantage that will be, right? Like, if you're a lot better of a player versus a lot worse of a player. But that's kind of like, what I'm trying to say is that it might have a really high cap. So I'm actually really interested about this. And then additionally, they gain attack damage and ability power, which is pretty nice. Divinity Corp. Divinity Corp champions grant unique stats to your team. So this feels like a reprint of in set 11. What was it called? Heavenly in set 11. Where you put in you can put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 of these units, and then they give you some small effect, and then it gets scaled up based on how many you play. So there's probably going to be 7 Divinicorp melee style comp, because that's how Heavenly worked out, right? If you're thinking about these stats, like, you know, HP, armor, AD, AP, crit, attack speed, a lot of these stats work out a lot better on melee units because a melee unit can make use of all of these stats. So a lot of times if you play like 7 Divinicorp plus whatever 4 cost melee carry you can have that synergizes with some of the traits, that's probably going to be a comp. If not, you're probably just playing 1 or 2 that synergize with your team, that give you like a synergy. For example, like Gragas here, I'm sure he's going to be, yeah, he's like a frontline trait. He's a bruiser. So if you play him with bruiser and then you have a bruiser on board, you can just benefit from getting a little bit of extra HP for your whole board, because that's how the Divinicorps work. So this is a really cool trait. I really liked Heavenly when it was available. So this seems like a nice, cool thing to play around. I'm not sure how it will play out because like how it worked last time was that with certain reroll lines it was busted. So hopefully it's not super broken, but we'll see how it plays out. Exotech. So Exotech, this is one of the other main vertical traits for the set. So you have a 3, a 5, a 7, and a 10. However, here you would need 3 emblems to hit the 10, which is a little bit of a large stretch goal, so to speak. But anyways, gain unique items that can only be equipped by Exotech champions. So this is something you probably, this is very similar to Ink Shadow in set 11. You kind of have to look at your Ink Shadow, or sorry, your, in this case, Exotech items and see who they fit on best. So like, you know, main carries, Zeri and Sejuani seems like a really solid tanks from what I've seen so far, but we'll talk about units particularly after this video, either at the end of this video or in a separate video today. But this seems pretty interesting. Seems pretty interesting and fun. Nothing really stands out until we actually look at the units, but it's just a matter of like making sure that these things synergize with the actual units. It seems good for Zeri, because Zeri seems like an auto attacker, right? Like she makes a bunch of echoes and they deal extra damage. So she seems like your resident Gwinsu user, auto attacker, similar to how Zeri is this set, except a little bit upgraded. So having like these bursts of attack, like a little bit of attack speed and extra tankiness, seems like it synergizes pretty well with this board. So that's kind of interesting for me, at least. Ooh, exotech items, it shows them. We can go through these another time, though. I don't really think I think it's gonna be a bit too much for this video. God of the Net. So this is the unique to Garen, which is a 5-cost trait. After 2-player combats, open an armory of trait mods that permanently reprogram a champion to benefit from a trait, but not contribute. So what that means is, like, let's say you're playing around Exotech, and you have 5 Exotech in. If you get a Garen, and then you after 2 rounds, you can give somebody Exotech. It's not going to mean that you have 6 Exotech in. You're still going to have 5 Exotech in, but whatever unit you put Exotech on will now be, quote-unquote, an Exotech unit. They'll benefit from the Exotech trait, and you can maybe put Exotech items on them, right? Every time you get a trait mod, the next one requires 1 additional round, so it kind of takes time. This seems really broken if you get them early. If you get them early, you can basically just reprogram a lot of your units to benefit from a lot of the stats on your team. So I think that this is going to be a really broken thing. 2 combats doesn't seem like a lot, so it's 2 and then 3. So at the end of 1 complete stage, approximately, you get 2 synergies that you can put on different units. Now, you can't put them on the same unit. I think once you trait mod a unit, you can't trait mod them again. But this seems very interesting. But it also seems very strong. I think if you have an early Garen, because then even if it adds like extra rounds, if you can get like 3 or even 4 of these mods, I think you just steamroll the lobby and you can really like cap out really high. Because like while it doesn't add like synergies, so you're not gonna hit like 10 Exotech in the example that I was giving. Giving extra stats, it kind of allows you to hyper carry, right? Like if you have a trait like Exotech, which gives attack speed, and then you give a trait with like AD to Zeri, now all of a sudden Zeri is getting a bunch of AD for free just because this guy exists, and he's a unit that still contributes to the board, being like some sort of tank and or melee frontline style user. It just seems like it scales to uncontrollable levels if you have him early enough. Obviously, if you have him late, he does nothing, but you know, it is what it is. Golden Ox. This seems interesting. I like oxes. I was born in the year of the cow. Or the ox. I just say cow because it's funny. But anyways, Golden Ox gain damage amp and have a chance to drop gold on kill. If you spend 8 gold on rerolls or XP in a single turn, permanently increase their damage amp and the gold required for the next bonus. Rerolls count as double towards the gold spent. So, when I look at this, I think to myself, this would be really good with a reroll line, because it will permanently increase their damage amp if you're spending every turn on gold. So if you're like slow rolling 50, for example, I feel like this is going to scale into an uncontrollable level. I think there's good abilities with augments. Now this is if you spend gold. So I remember there was another trait like this in the past where it was like you only got benefits if you spent the gold, not if you got free rerolls. So please be aware of that. That's like, you know, if you take this and you take like Prismatic Ticket, for example, you're not going to get infinite damage amp with Prismatic Ticket. You actually have to spend the gold. But the thing is, rerolls count double, meaning that you only have to do 2 rerolls. You only have to spend 4 gold per round with the rerolls. It actually sounds kind of nuts. So like if we're looking for carries, it might be somebody like Graves if Graves is strong, or Jarvan. But Jarvan's usually like a frontline tanky kind of dude, so I don't think it's going to be that strong. I'm not sure. Obviously, XP, being able to tempo level with this also seems like it could be strong. But in my head, I think that rerolls might be a little bit more beneficial. But I don't see anybody as being like a primary carry here, right? Like, Alistar seems like a frontline unit. Graves seems like a carry, but I don't know how much of a carry. So it's basically like Graves reroll maybe. So the chances are you're just going to use it more for the just gaining a little bit. Like, you're not going to dedicate yourself to this trait, because there's not like, it doesn't look like there's like a multiple reroll line that you can benefit from. Does that make sense? Like, it feels like, you know, you're not going to be like, I'm Golden Ox primary and I'm just going to crank this damage amp as much as I can. It's like, it's probably more along the lines of, I'll have it in and I'll get like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 cash outs, and over the course of the game, maybe I'll get a couple more, and then that will strengthen my Annie and or Aphelios as my carry, if that makes sense. Not like that you're just like dedicated to cranking this number as high as you can, playing reroll, if that makes sense. Nitro. Every round, Nitro champions grant Chrome to an RO80T based on their star level. Each Chrome grants 14 health and 1 ability power at 200 chrome. It upgrades. So based on their star level, so chrome per star is either 2, 3, 5, or 7. So if you have a 3-star, it gives 5 per round. If you have a 2-star, it gives 3 per round. If you have a 1-star, it gives 2 per round, I believe. And then a 4-star gives 7. This seems like the dedicated set reroll trait. There's usually a trait where it has all low-cost units that benefit from being very high level. So it seems like you're going to be probably playing around like a Kindred carry, Nidalee, and Shyvana. And then eventually, if you get, you can cap out and get the Elise for later. But this seems like, you commit to it very early. You try and get 3-star everybody, scale up this robot, and then have other synergies that can support this board. Might be fun, might be a little bit overtuned. It looks exciting. I think it looks cute. Like, they all look like little toy soldier things, right? Like little like mechs, like model kits, which is really nice. So, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. It just depends how much this scaling is. If the scaling is insane, then that might be a problem. However, usually when I have a summon trait, I like it to be a balance of either like a reroll or you benefit from the early unit that you have. This seems like it's much more focused towards reroll, right? Like there's two polar opposites, right? Like this one seems very reroll focused. Like it doesn't seem like it's super useful because they're all low cost units. So it doesn't seem like this matters that much. If you to tech it in later in the game, right? This is something you have to commit to a lot earlier from when I read it. The opposite is how Scion was this set, right? In set 13, Scion and Black Rose was something that you very rarely were trying to 3-star all your units to scale up the Scion. It was more so like you teched it in to get an extra frontline unit to stabilize your board as like a flex trait. And what I'm saying is this is like the opposite, right? And sometimes there's sets where it lands somewhere in the middle, like Storyweaver in set 11 was similar to that. Like a lot of times you played it for early tempo, or you played just 3 to get the benefit of the Kale, but then other times you played pure reroll Kale carry, and there was like 2 options for the trait. But this one seems like the complete opposite of the Scion one, like that type of polarizing that you want to reroll. Overlord, so this is the unique to Renekton, which is a 5 cost. So Overlord, you take a bite out of the unit behind him, dealing 40% of their max health as true damage, and then he gains 40% of their health and 33% of their attack damage. So this seems like a little bit like Hunger for Power, but Hunger for Power the unit. Soul Killer, gain a hologram of the highest cost enemy Viego killed last round. It has 600, 900, 3000 health, deals 30, 40, 200% damage, and has 1 recommended item. So this seems pretty interesting. You just get like a free target dummy basically. Especially late game, this seems like a really high cap, because if Viego, if you can pop off with this Viego a little bit, then you can always guarantee that you have like an extra 5 cost or an extra 4 cost on your board, which is pretty interesting. I'm not sure how strong it is. It basically comes down to how much effective this clone is doing and how strong Viego is. Because if Viego isn't killing shit, then this is kind of irrelevant. Street Demon. So this looks like another one of the primary vertical traits for the set. So this one is a 10 trait with 8 units, which means that you only need 2 emblems to hit the prismatic trait. So allies in partnered hexes gain health, ability power, and attack damage. Some hexes are signature hexes and grant 50% more. Street Demons double all bonuses. So this is similar to like KDA in set 10. Similar to Experiment in this set, except instead of having just 1 hex that you have to place your unit on, you now have multiple hexes. And there are some hexes that give you a little bit extra juice, but that's not too relevant. That like, hopefully it's not, or what I mean to say is hopefully it's not too relevant. Hopefully you still have the option to move around your units in such a way that you can position around enemy boards. That was one of the biggest things that I hated about Experiment and Twitch, was that you're playing a sniper where you need to position your board and position your units accordingly, but you have to force your sniper into a particular hex, which means you often can get very easily placed around where you're not getting good sniper value. They'll just put their main tank on the side of the Experiment hex, and it just poses you a question of, do I sack Experiment or not? And a lot of times you're better off not sacking, and it's just bad. So this gives you a lot more flexibility, which is nice. And then you have lots of units here. We're looking for inter-team synergies. I'm not sure if there are any. It seems like there's Techie and Strategist, which is really interesting, right? Techie and Strategist, we'll see what they are later. But this might be a good, those might be some verticals that you might play a little bit deeper with Street Demon. And you have the 5-cost Samira. Syndicate. So get a Kingpin that uniquely upgrades a Syndicate champion's ability. Syndicate champions gain health and damage amp. So this is nice. You have like a nice little mixture of stats. I also didn't say it here, but you also have a nice little mixture of stats with Street Demon. But here you get the Kingpins, and then on 5 you get 2 Kingpins. So it's basically going to come down to like those particular units and what that upgraded ability is. It kind of feels a little bit like Experiment, except you get to choose the unit instead of position around the unit, where they're going to have some bonus effect on their ability. Virus. Virus in your shop affects your shop with a 10% chance to spawn a Bloblet. When purchased, it merges and increases the strongest Zack's health by 3% and ability power by 5. So this is like Zack, who is going to be a frontline HP stun tank dude. And basically he scales by, in your shop, being able to buy these extra blobs that give some extra HP and stuff. Now, I think this is really interesting. It does beg the question of how broken is early Zack, because if you can scale him up infinitely with his HP and his ability power, this Zack might turn into an issue into late game. So this is really interesting, but he is like kind of like a pseudo like throw-in tank, and I don't think he has any other synergies when you hover over him. He just has the virus synergy, so he's like the ultimate like just throw him in if you hit him early, scale him up, and then you have like a giga tank that can also do damage, which is pretty interesting. Amp. So Amp champions upgrade their abilities in unique ways with Amp. They also gain health. So I don't know what this is. I don't understand it, but we'll see when we can actually play it. Like, what does 1 amp, 2 amp, 3 amp, 4 amp mean? It's like, you know, is it like an item that I put on? I'm assuming it's like some sort of toggle that you can put the item on somebody. Not necessarily an item, but you kind of like, you know, select the unit to put the amp on, because if you amp them up, then they get this extra, like you can see in all of their abilities, there's like a little bit of like a thing plus amp or plus 1 amp, etc. So this might be good to just like cap out certain units. I don't know if it's a vertical amp style board if you ever want to play around it, because these units seem like they're very, at least visually, they don't look like they fit together very well. Maybe this is something you play, like, you know, you just get in 2 amp to play around whoever your main carry is, if you're carrying any of these units, or you play like a little bit deeper into amp if you're playing around like one of these being a hyper carry, like your main itemized unit or something. Bastion. So Bastion is usually the dedicated armor trait. Your team gains 10 armor. So this is basically like what Sentinels is this set. They usually just have different names for different sets, just, you know, more thematic and stuff. So you basically just get armor, except it's a little bit different this set. It's for the first 10 seconds, Bastions increase their bonus by 100%. So they basically get double armor for the first 10 seconds, and then your team only gets 10 armor and magic resist. So they don't get the full however much you get for the synergy. 6 Bastion, however, gives non-Bastions an additional 40, which is pretty interesting. So then you get 50 armor and MR if you're at 6 Bastion, which is nice. Bruiser, your team gains 100 health. Bruisers gain more, so this is very similar to the current set. Dynamo, every 3 seconds your team gains mana. Dynamos gain 100% more. So this is like invokers or like those type of things in previous sets. Basically just like a mana generation. It's similar to what is it called, Visionaries this set, but it's a little bit different the way it works. Every 3 seconds is hard to know. Sometimes if you play around like deeper into these type of traits, you can play like no mana builds and just go pure DPS. It really comes down to the units themselves, because it's a little bit awkward. You know, Morgana, hack the target and the nearest non-hacked enemy, dealing magic damage over 10 seconds. Is this not the exact same Morgana that we have this set? That's crazy. Anyways, what I was trying to say is that giving your whole team mana is pretty interesting, because it helps basically your whole team get a couple casts off a little bit earlier, which is nice. Every 3 seconds, however, is the problem. I don't know how fast that is. It feels like it's slow, because like 3 seconds you get 5 mana. Like, that's the equivalent of 1 auto attack. So it's like 1 bonus auto attack every 3 seconds. You know, when it's 12, it's a little bit better, right? Like, that makes it a little bit more sense. It's like, I don't know how important this will be as a trait, if that makes sense. It's hard to say. maybe I'm wrong. Obviously, the actual Dynamo units, they gain twice as much. They have 100% more, so it might be a little bit better for them. Executioner abilities can critically strike. They also gain bonus critical strike chance, critical strike damage. This is like Ambusher, except now they just call it Executioner. They used to call it Executioner in set 10. So that's something that exists. If the target's health is below 30%, the bonus critical strike damage is doubled. So this is kind of like a good finisher offer type of build. That's pretty cool and interesting. So we have Graves, we have a couple units. I think there's like a mix of frontline and backline units. There's some units that are a little bit interesting, like Vex. I think she jumps into the front line, and Urgot kind of pulls people towards him, I think, using his ult. So that's pretty interesting. Marksman. Marksmen's gain attack damage. After 8 seconds of combat, they increase their bonus by 100%. So that's pretty interesting. This is basically just like giving AD, and then after a certain amount of time, they get like way more AD. So this might be good with like ramping up comps with really good frontline as well. So you can guarantee that you get the AD burst before your frontline actually dies. So that's pretty cool. There's a couple 4 costs, which means there might be some flex options of playing like dual 4 cost carries, which is actually pretty interesting because it is only a 2 trait. So you can probably play like some sort of like double 4 cost backline marksman. It seems very AD focused, obviously, so this might be something if you have like a very AD setup, right? Like a lot of AD items, or like you have my what's the thing, the one that gives you 4 swords as a prismatic. Like that might be something cool to play here, maybe. That's what I'm trying to think of. We'll see. None of them really have any frontline traits, and some of them are like or don't look like they have frontline traits, but that might be interesting. There might also be like reroll versions with other units, which we'll see. Rapid fire. Your team gains 10% attack speed, so this is really cool because it gives your team a little bit of boost in attack speed. So this might be something useful to just tech in, because 10% attack speed, that's pretty decent, right? That's a good chunk, right? Rapid fire champions gain more on each attack, stacking up to 10 times. So this is like a little bit like a Gwinsu style augment, right? Like they kind of stack 10 times their trait, which might make it that some of these users, especially late game, might not even need Gwinsu. I see Zeri here. I know Zeri's a rapid fire exotech. We were just talking about her a little bit ago. And then we have some other units like Kindred. I think most of the units here that you see, even though this trait gives attack speed, the chances are they probably do well with like a Gwinsu, most of these holders, just because like the starting attack speed and then double stacking Gwinsu as well as the trait seems like it probably synergizes well with their kit if they're like a primary auto attacker style build. So that's something that's pretty interesting. We'll see how it plays out. I like the 10% base because just giving it to your team seems pretty cool. Slayer. So Slayers gain attack damage and Omnivamp. Overhealing heals the lowest percent health Slayer for 50% of the excess amount. So you get AD and you get Omnivamp, which is pretty interesting. And then if they overheal, so if you build them with like a lot of damage and they kill too much, then it basically allows you to sustain the other Slayers. That's pretty interesting. It gives AD, so this might be like a crit Slayer build. If there's a Slayer Executioner, that would probably go nuts as like a synergy. But of course, you know, I'm sure they didn't do that. But either way, the only one that sticks out to me from what I saw in the previous releases was Shaco. So Shaco, I think, is a permanently scaling 1 cost. So there's probably going to be some sort of Shaco reroll line. The chances are it's going to be playing into the Slayer synergy to give him built-in Omnivamp, which is nice. So basically all of these units, a lot of times when you're thinking about these units that are like, you know, in the front line and need some level of sustain, it's pretty interesting to give Omnivamp in the trait, because that just gives it makes it so you're less reliant on having to do like BT Hodge, and you can go for more like, you know, IE Deathblade and go for more damage because you have built-in Omnivamp here with the trait. Strategist. So Strategist was probably my favorite trait ever. Because I played it in set 9, and that was like my main thing that I played in set 9. I loved Strategist. When I would flex Strategist all the time in set 9. It was my favorite trait, and set 9 was my favorite set, so you can argue the Strategist in the back, it was previously my favorite thing. Now this doesn't look like the Strategist that I know, because it says combat start, allies in the back 2 rows gain damage amp, allies in the front 2 rows gain durability, Strategist gain triple. Wait, this actually sounds broken. This sounds incredibly strong. What? So the Strategist I remember, I think it was like AP in the back line, and you got like something else in the front line. I forget. But it's very similar. The idea is that like if you have a backline unit, they gain something. If you have a front line unit, they gain something. Now, Strategists gain triple. 2 Strategists basically will have 15% durability and 21% damage amp. Like, these numbers seem like a lot. Like, obviously it's PBE, the set isn't released yet, these numbers probably can change, but the fact that it gives it to everybody on your board as well seems kind of nuts. Like, this might be a thing where you play around 4 Strategist flex or 3 Strategist flex or like 2. Like, you try and play a flex around some of these units, like, you know, Nico Ziggs, for example, like a Nico Ziggs Yumi or something. I know there was the synergy of strategies with Street Demons as well, but this just seems like a lot of stats, right? Like, if you're giving it to your whole team, right? Allies in the front 2 rows gain damage, and allies in the front back 2 rows gain damage, and front 2 rows gain durability. Like, isn't this just good? Like, it just seems like a lot of value. Because, like, you know, like similar to some of the other traits like Bruiser just gives 100 HP. Bastion just gives 10 armor and magic resist. This gives 5, even if you have just 2 in, it has 5 durability and 7 damage amp, which is pretty nice because your backline users do more damage, your frontline users are a little bit more tanky. I don't know, this seems really good. Like, this seems like something that I would like to play around. Just, like, throw in 3 or 4 of these dudes and then just, like, try and build a board around the other synergies. Like, flex around Strategist, similar to how Strategist was played in a set what's it called, set 9. So this might be like my trait, right? If I have to pick a trait that I'm gonna play around. Also, it has Nico. I'm a big Nico fan. I think this unit's cool. She turns into a helicopter. Like, I never played League, right? I have no affinity towards these units, but every time I see Nico in a set, she always looks cool. So Nico enjoyer, yay. Techie. Techies gain ability power. Enemies hit by their abilities deal 10% less damage for 3 seconds. Okay, so this is kind of like a little bit of like nerf the enemy team. Probably want to put it on like units with AoE. They gain ability power. So this is similar to like Sorks, except they're adding the damage reduction effect to everybody a little bit, which is kind of interesting, kind of nice. 15, 45, 80, and then 110. And then enemies hit deal 18% less damage. And there are 8 of them. So if you fit in 8 techies, you can get that to work. Now, is there any inter-team synergy? Whenever I look at these large vertical traits, I always look for inter-team synergies because I'm curious of if the vertical trait can sustain itself. Think something like Rebel. Rebel had inter-team synergy of Sentinels in the last set, so you were able to make like a makeshift front line around Alawi Irelia that you had some sort of front line activated. So that's what I'm looking at here, right? So like, for example, this is a Bastion Shyvana. So do we have another Bastion? Or do we have just damage? We have a Bruiser. It doesn't look like we have another frontline synergy. Right? We have a Bastion. And then we have a Bruiser. Oh, we have a Bruiser here. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Maybe I'm wrong. It's hard to tell. But it doesn't seem like it's synergized as well, which means that the vertical trait is probably not going to be played that much. You're probably just going to play towards 6 techie, if anything, if you're playing deep into the trait. Vanguard. So Vanguards gain 10% durability while shielded, combat start, and 50% health, gain a max health shield for 10 seconds. So this is the last of the frontline traits, right? So we have, you know, the dedicated HP one, the dedicated armor and MR one, and now we have the dedicated bonus durability or whatever. This one is health shields. Health shields are usually pretty good because getting a health shield scales really well, especially with rerolls. So a lot of reroll lines you might want to play around Vanguard. We'll see, right? We'll see how it plays out. 6 Vanguard with the extra durability also seems a little bit interesting. They also have inherent shielding, so shielding augments and shielding Ornn artifacts and things that scale off a shield also could be really effective here. Anyways, so that is all of this stuff. Let's see we'll just look at the emblems in terms of what's craftable and stuff. as a little concluder for this video. And then I think right after this video, so once I finish uploading this one, we'll go through the individual units just to not make this video too long for anybody that wants to watch it. So Cypher emblem made with a sword, Divinicorp emblem made with a bow, Street Demon made with a rod, Anima made with a tear, Boombot made with a chain, Syndicate made with a cloak, Ox made with a belt, Exotech made with a glove, and then we have our frying pan. So Marksman made with a sword, Rapid Fire made with a bow, Techie made with a rod, Dynamo made with a tear, Bastion made with a chainmail, Slayer made with a cloak, Bruiser made with a belt, and then Executioner made with a glove. And then Vanguard and Strategist are uncraftable, that you just have to live with the fact that they exist in the game. Alright, so overall thoughts on stuff. I'm most excited for Strategist. I know that's going to be very lame and whatever, but that is what it is. I think the traits, a lot of these feel like reprints of previous set ones, so nothing seems super exciting or fresh or new, except for maybe like Cyber Boss seems a little bit interesting. I mean, to me at least, like I'm not like, you know, confused looking at any of these of like, I wonder how this is gonna work. A lot of these, it's like, yeah, I've seen this relatively similarly before. It's like I have a good idea of what's going on here. I think that in terms of frontline trades, Vanguard usually is really good early sets. This type of shielding scales really well with rerolls and others. So if you have a reroll board that fits in one of these units as your main reroll tank, a lot of times this works really well with that. I don't like that Bastion doesn't give as much armor to the rest of your team, so it might be a little bit less powerful than how Sentinels is this set. And then Bruisers is always like hit or miss. It's like if they have enough HP that they're unkillable, it's really good, and if they don't, then it's not as good. So frontline traits seem like, you know, on par with usual. Usually one of them is going to be stronger than the other ones, and then everybody's going to complain and play that one until it gets nerfed, and then they'll play the other ones. But yeah, it's hard to tell the trait web right now without looking at the actual units. So we're going to look at the units in the next video. And that should give us a little bit more of an indication on how things kind of mesh together with one another, and gives us a little bit of an insight on how some of the boards are going to work out, which should be really interesting and fun. I'm excited. Some of these traits, even though they're returning, and I said that they're not like exciting or fresh to me, they are stuff that I like, right? Like Divinicorp, I loved Heavenly when it was around. I liked Ink Shadow a lot, so I'm probably going to enjoy Exotech. This seems fun. This seems interesting. We have to see how it plays out. Even Anima's squad seems kind of interesting and cool. There's a lot of these that are like, you know, fan favorites, so to speak, which, you know, we'll see how it works out. The only thing I don't like is that the scaling is on a reroll, which is also on the summon trait. So I feel like this one's going to be a little bit hard to play around, and I'm usually a fan of my scaling comps, so I usually like it to be a little bit separated, you know, the different play styles. But, you know, it is what it is. That's fine. You know, we'll rock it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and see ya. Bye-bye.